Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. Hollywood completely ruled the world during the studio days. That was a time when actors were signed to contracts and they were bound by what the studio wanted them to do. They told them what was okay and what wasn't. Each studio had fixers that were in place, permanently hired by the studio themselves to do nothing but calm down rumors that occurred about their stars. Once they signed a contract with the studio, the actors had very little control over their lives after that. Studios dictated who they dated or married, how much they weighed, how they dressed in public, especially women, in the fact that they couldn't wear pants. They were also in charge of the roles that they played. Lavender marriages were arranged for gay actors. They prescribed uppers to keep actors working long hours. They had doctors on staff to do this. Divorces were discouraged. Drunk driving accidents and even murders were hushed up with payoffs to the cops and district attorneys. Hollywood during this time controls Southern California. And it's pretty amazing what some of these actors had done to them and what they did to themselves to keep their careers on track. For instance, Joan Crawford was so concerned with maintaining her beauty that she actually had her back teeth removed to help accentuate her cheekbones. She also soaked her eyes in boric acid every week to make them sparkle on camera. Once a week, she would steam her face, apply a mask, and soak her eyes in this boric acid solution. She would often alternate using witch hazel on the eyes as well. This was a ritualistic thing that she did once a week. Shirley Temple went on to reveal that any time the child actors were acting up or not behaving the way that they thought that they should, they would make them sit on a block of solid ice. They ended up naming this punishment the black box. Shirley Temple recalled these events when she was alive, saying that as far as she could tell, the black box really had no lasting damage on her psyche. But looking back on it now, it seems awful cruel and unusual. In Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, live birds were tied to Tippi Hedren, and they also threw birds at her during those iconic scenes. She was originally told by Hitchcock that the birds would be fake, but there were mechanical issues, so they decided to use real birds instead. Miss Hedren said that this was so traumatizing to her because it was really brutal, ugly, and relentless. She states that she was so focused on her own survival during the filming that she didn't notice, but later on she was told that the crew was terrified to watch her go through this horrifying and heartbreaking experience. But nobody would stop it except for Hitchcock, and he didn't. Gene Kelly was so aggressively pushing Debbie Reynolds while dancing in the filming of Singing in the Rain that she just broke down and went and hid under a piano. He criticized everything she did, and so did the studio. All she wanted was a word of encouragement, but she was new and had to do what they said. They worked her so hard that her feet would be bleeding at the end of the day. Kelly also allegedly, forcibly French kissed Reynolds during a scene. This caused her to gag and ask for a drink of Coca-Cola to rinse her mouth out. You see, in the early 50s, she was just an innocent kid who had never been French kissed, and she felt like it was an assault when it happened. She couldn't believe that this 39-year-old man would do this to her. Audrey Hepburn felt pressure to maintain her signature doe-eyed look because that's what the studio wanted, and they didn't care what the cost was. This was achieved by painstakingly separating each eyelash with a safety pin. Her makeup artist revealed that he was in charge of doing this every time she was in front of a camera. And he emphasized the fact that this was a super slow process of applying mascara, then separating each eyelash as he went along. The studio had actors sign morality clauses in their contracts. Anything that would destroy or scandalize a star. It allowed the studios to get out of contracts if something happened that they weren't able to fix. They felt that female stars would ruin their careers if they became pregnant. Stars like Lana Turner and Judy Garland were sent to hospitals that the studios owned for abortions under the guise of things like an appendectomy or ear infections. In the 1920s and 30s, movie sets actually used asbestos to give off the illusion of snow. One of the biggest scenes ever to feature asbestos snow is in The Wizard of Oz, where the snowflakes that wake Dorothy and her friends up from the Wicked Witch's spell are really made of asbestos. Also in Oz, Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch, wore toxic face paint while making the film. That green face paint was made of a copper base, and it was known to the studio that this caused major problems when it was applied. It was also very toxic to ingest, which made Hamilton only be able to eat or get nourishment by drinking liquids through a straw, while the actors were required to sign no drug use policies. The big Hollywood studios didn't practice what they preached. They would have doctors on set to give the actors what they called vitamins to keep their talent level up for these arduous schedules that they had them doing. Judy Garland talks about how her and Mickey Rooney were given pills to keep them on their feet for long days of work and exhausting schedules. Then they would take them to the studio-owned hospitals and knock them out with sleeping pills. Then 4 hours later, they would wake them up by giving them pep pills again so they could work 72 hours in a row. She states that it just became a way of life. Some of the stuff they did to these young child stars is really disturbing. Jackie Cooper, in one film, couldn't make himself cry in one particular scene in the movie Skippy. So the director threatened to have Cooper's dog killed if he couldn't produce tears. The director told him to open his eyes and look at him. Then he told him what he was going to do to his dog. Immediately he began sobbing hysterically, almost too much for the scene to be shot. He wanted to hurry up and calm down so that after the scene was over, he could go see if his dog was still alive. It's pretty amazing the control that Hollywood had during that time. There's so much of this stuff, I'm probably going to do a part 2 and a part 3 to this, as long as you guys like this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.